I'm super excited to introduce you to Anton Buenavista. He's the ecosystem lead at Pendle, a protocol that's crushing it at Arbitrum, and Anton will guide us through an overview of the Pencosystem in Arbitrum. So yeah, looking forward for that, Anton.
Hello, everyone. I'm Anton from Pendle, and I lead ecosystem growth at Pendle, mainly trying to grow our ecosystem overall. And I'm here to talk about our Pencosystem, or basically our Pendle ecosystem. Now, if you've been using Pendle, you know we're all about points in the last few months. So any of you have been farming points, have heard of Pendle in some form. And I'm here to talk about how we're actually more than points and how we're actually a protocol where you can trade yield and have a diverse position across those different yield-bearing assets. So just a quick overview. The idea of trading yield or interest is not new. It actually originated in traditional finance, where we have interest rate swaps, interest rate derivatives, where different forms of interest can be traded across different markets, right? And this is the largest financial market with over $550 trillion worth of market cap. So what we do at Pendle is take this concept and deploy this to the rest of DeFi, where you can actually trade yield across these different markets. Because in DeFi, everything's about yield in some form, right? Everyone knows that APY is the most recognizable term across all of DeFi. So what is Pendle? Well, Pendle is this platform where we can tokenize yield. And we do this by splitting the yield from the principal. So we can take a yield-bearing asset such as stETH or stETH from Lido, and we split the yield. Let's say it earns 3% of staking yield from the underlying principal itself. And each component can be traded in its own markets. And that way, you can have positions across those two different assets where if you are long yield, you would buy YTs. But if you'd want to get a fixed rate, then you can buy the principal portion of it, or what we call PTs. So how does this work in practice? Again, we have a yield-bearing token that is split into the YT, or the yield token, and the principal, or what we call the principal token. And how would this look like is, let's just say in Compound, you have a lending position of, let's say, 100 DAI, and that 100 DAI is yield-bearing. It's earning fees over time because of lending fees, right? We can take that position and split that in Pendle, where you have 100 PT and 100 YT, where the 100 YT represents your right to earn yield over time. So there is a maturity date attached to this position as well. So let's just say it lasts over 3 months. And over 3 months, as long as you hold those yield tokens or YTs, then you can earn the yield that has been given off by Compound. In this case, if Compound also has points, then you as a YT holder will be also earning those points. On the other hand, if you are bearish all of those yields and would want to get a fixed rate instead, then you can take a position in PTs instead, right? So this basically is a discounted asset, which gives you the right to redeem the underlying asset at maturity. So in this case, for 100 PT, you would be able to, after 3 months, redeem it back to 100 DAI. And since you're trading this in the market, then it's a a zero coupon bond or a discounted asset where you can actually buy the 100 DAI cheaply, let's say 90 DAI worth, and you'd be able to redeem it back to 100 DAI at maturity. So this has basically a very direct correlated relationship between YT and PT. So YT is your time depreciating asset, because over time you get less and less yield and it becomes worth less at maturity. While for PTs, this is your time appreciating asset, because it becomes redeemable one-to-one at maturity. So you can buy PTs at a discount, wait until maturity, redeem it back for the underlying asset. And for YTs, you can hold it, just earn all the underlying yields, all the points, and it becomes worthless because you're basically long or very bullish on the yield itself. So in practice, we have a market such as USDE, and this is on Arbitrum, where you are speculating on the points itself, right? And we see points as a form of yield. So USDE itself is not yield-bearing, but since points is a form of yield, then people can speculate what actual APYs you are getting by holding USDE. So if you are bearish on points and you don't care about points and you want to forgo it, you can just basically buy USDE at a discount and be able to redeem more USDE back at maturity. And this is how you can essentially trade the yield. And we've built a specialized AMM just to be able to facilitate across these different assets, right? So it's similar to Uniswap v3, where we can concentrate liquidity in a range. But instead of like concentrated liquidity in a spot prices, we do it with yield instead. So for example, for stETH, if we know it's trading between 0.5% to 7%, then liquidity is concentrated in that yield band instead. And yeah, in summary, this is kind of like the different positions that you can take in Pendle. Again, if you're bullish with yields and points, then you would want to get a position in YT. Since it's a fraction of the cost, this kind of like displays your like leverage position on those points or yield. Like you can get up until 145x leverage on, let's say, either 5 points. But on the other hand, if you're bearish points, you can just take PT, where you get a fixed rate instead for going all those points and get more of the underlying, let's say, EETH back. And for LP, if you're just wanting to provide liquidity, earn those transaction fees and Pendle incentives, then you can just add liquidity into the AMM and get exposure to all those yields, but on top of that, those AMM fees. And just a brief history, right? So we've been live since 2021, but we've been a beneficiary of the whole liquid staking, restaking sector, the points meta, only in the last few months, like only within this year. So we've been building for a long time and just trying to introduce a new DeFi primitive that would be useful for everyone, because we believe that yield trading is a very important tool for you to hedge or kind of like gain leverage exposure across these different yield opportunities within DeFi. And everything, again, in DeFi has something to do with yield. So we work with many different tokens, like protocols. So here are kind of like a few of them. And we work with several protocols within Arbitrum itself, such as GMX, Camelot, HMX, different like protocols as well. So yeah, to name a few. So this has been our growth, right? And you can actually see there our growth within the last 7 months. So we've relatively been, quite small, but because of the boom of restaking and the points meta, and we've been able to be a huge beneficiary of this, like a huge interest or hype. Like most of the markets, we've been able to grow up until a 6.6 billion TVL, all-time high. But because in Pendle, every pool has a maturity date attached to it, meaning that as a fixed rate holder or as a PT holder, in order for you to realize your yields, you need to be able to redeem them at expiry. So on 27th of June, we had over 3.5 billion worth of markets expiring on that day. So at that day, people were able to redeem their yields and realize them, right? Now, it is our job to keep on introducing markets, to keep on attracting users to come back into Pendle and to be able to trade those yields. So for us, TVL will always be this kind of like ephemeral cycle, where every cycle there would be expired markets, and then we would be introducing new maturities, new markets, where we would be able to attract users back to trade those yields. So job's not done for us. So this is kind of like our core values, right? Where we want to focus on product development. So if you've been using Pendle, you've seen our improvements on limit orders, introducing our auto rolling feature. We also grow like partnerships, like that's why we have this Pencosystem, which I'll describe later on. And at Pendle, we've created a brand where we're always on top of trends. So whether they be restaking, liquid staking, whether it has something to do with AI or maybe deepen, as long as there's yield to be traded, then you can expect Pendle to have a presence there and to be able to give you an opportunity to trade those yields. And of course, with that, continuous experimentation. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so let me skip that. But yeah, let me talk more about the Pencosystem. So Pencosystem is this idea, right, that beyond points that you can actually use Pendle assets such as YTs and PTs in different forms in the rest of DeFi, right? So again, PTs represent your fixed rate assets. And in this case, because it's a fixed rate asset which is redeemable to the underlying asset, you can actually use it in different other DeFi protocols, such as maybe a lending protocol where you can borrow against it. And let me kind of like highlight each one. And if you are in any of these teams, then maybe you can give a woo just to let me know that you guys are here. So we can distribute them into different buckets. So we have yield optimizers, where you can actually increase your yield exposure into these different protocols with Pendle assets. We have lending protocols, where you can borrow against your PTs. And we have vaults, where they can execute different kinds of strategies against your Pendle assets. So one first project that I'd like to highlight is Silo, and Silo is also in Arbitrum, and we have a strong synergistic partnership with Silo as well. Basically, the idea of Silo is that you have a risk-isolated market where you can provide collateral such as RPTs and borrow against it. And so, yeah, so they support like many different PTs from Pendle, and in turn, we are also able to support their lending positions because these are yield-bearing, and also create like a market out of it where people can trade the yield out of this lending positions from Silo itself. So one funny tidbit is Silo intern and Pendle intern are friends, and Pendle intern was Silo intern's first friend. So yeah. So another protocol we'd like to highlight is Dolomite, and Dolomite is also a lending protocol where you can post your PTs as collateral and borrow against it. So one unique thing about Dolomite is they combine the idea of like a DEX and a cross-margin lending protocol where you can basically use that liquidity in various forms of yield-bearing opportunities. So with your PTs, you can basically kind of like have more exposure to additional yield. TimeSwap is also another lending protocol, but this time it is a lending protocol that doesn't rely on oracles, and there is a fixed term attached to them. So basically, your positions are unliquidatable, but you can basically lend out your PTs, like the Pendle assets, and be able to earn those lending fees at a fixed term instead. So if you can also like borrow against those PTs at a fixed term. Stella is what we call a yield optimizer, where you are able to optimize your LP positions on Pendle. And they do this through PenPy, which is another layer on top, and it's a liquid locker where, because we have a V token model, so they are able to kind of like boost your yields through that layer. And with Stella, you can, if you are kind of like a bullish on LP yields on Pendle, then you would want to do it through Stella. So you can loop around that strategy and gain more yield that way. Theranauts is a options protocol. So the idea here is that you can provide your PT as collateral. You borrow ETH against it, and then it gets used in a vault that earns options premiums. So if you want to have some exposure into an options protocol in some way with your Pendle assets, then Theranauts is one way to go. Peachy is a points trading protocol. So they also take advantage of ERC 6551, which is the token-bound accounts. The idea behind, again, token-bound accounts, like from the previous presentation, is that you have an NFT having ownership with many different wallets. And since these wallets are earning points over time, you can then use that NFT to trade it with other users. So essentially, Peachy is a place for you to be able to trade points. That is earned through Pendle, like Pendle YTs. Credit Guild is also a lending protocol, but in this case, you basically have different lending terms. So you have maybe, let's say, different collateralization ratios, different interest rates, and again, like here, you can use your PTs to be able to borrow against it and use it in some form across the rest of DeFi. Another one, GammaSwap, another perpetual options protocol, where in this case, they have an AMM. So in here, we have WeETH and PT WeETH. And liquidity is borrowed against that AMM, and you can kind of like deploy it and do leverage strategies against it, like be able to leverage on points or provide liquidity and earn against your LP will be able to earn like more fees against those borrowers as well. Locus is a vault, or like an asset management platform. And one of the baskets that they support is Pendle assets specifically. So it could be a basket that's holding many different kinds of PTs, whether they be LRTs or like a USD or USD denominated assets. It could be also LP positions. So in this single vault, you can have exposure to basically a basket of diversified Pendle positions. Marginly is a margin trading protocol. So if you are the kind where you would want to margin trade positions like on AMMs and stuff, this is one platform that you can use. But other than that, because Pendle has its own AMM where you can trade between YTs and PTs, then Marginly is a place for you to be able to trade on margin up until 20x for these different types of Pendle assets. And I think these are some of the vaults that are interesting within Pendle, because like for Pendle, one of the core friction that people face, I guess, is that for every maturity, right, you would have to redeem your assets, and then you yourself have to roll over into the next maturity. So protocols like Adaptify are trying to solve this problem where it's a vault, and they will automatically roll over your position into the next maturity, and you don't have to even worry about it. So you can have basically lazy liquidity. You can have your own PTs, and they will be automatically rolled over for you. And that would be the same for Urine as well. So Urine has actually also developed a vault for us, where it is a auto-rolling PT vault. And it's the same concept where you can put your PTs in. You don't have to worry about maturity dates. It will automatically be rolled over to the next maturity, and you're basically just collecting, those fixed rates over time. So in summary, and this is the last one, by the way, there is a slew of different protocols out there which you can take advantage of and use your Pendle assets, right? So what's next for us, right? So for us, just beyond points, we're all about helping grow this ecosystem, right? So on Arbitrum, as the same way that we've been a beneficiary to the growth of GMX, Camelot, and other blue chip protocols on Arbitrum, we would want to do the same way for other protocols in Arbitrum that would want to gain some form of traction, right? And we can do that by, taking advantage of money Legos and composability, because all these different Pendle assets can be used across these different DeFi protocols. And in that way, when they grow, then we grow as well. And I think that's a beautiful way to look in how the whole DeFi ecosystem in Arbitrum is growing overall. And I think we can all be synergistic in that manner. So beyond that, of course, we're kind of like, as long as there's strong interest in restaking in LRTs, we'll keep on facilitating and providing markets for that. We are also exploring Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is an upcoming narrative that everyone is talking about, and we are also looking to bringing those markets into Arbitrum. So if you're interested in trading the yield of Bitcoin staking, yields from Bitcoin staking specifically, then there might be something for us there that we'll be introducing maybe sometime end of this month. And of course, we're here to help Arbitrum grow, because as Arbitrum grows, then we as a protocol will grow as well, and it's in our kind of like interest. And we want to underscore this as well, that we would want all the protocols that we work with to grow in tandem. And of course, Pendle v3. So what you've seen right now is our v2 deployment, and v3 is something that we've been working hard internally for a long time. Now, I can't reveal much about what Pendle v3 entails, but you can think of it as something that will work complementary to our existing v2. So yeah, we'll share more to come later this year, probably around September-ish or so. And hopefully we can get it out in later this year or early next year. And I think that will be another forum for you to be able to trade yield effectively across all the DeFi yield-bearing assets in DeFi, whether it be Arbitrum or Ethereum mainnet. So that's it. And thank you for having me. So if you are a DeFi protocol in Arbitrum and you're building something unique and you're interested in using any of our Pendle assets in some form, please reach out to me. I'll just be here around the, the theater. So yeah, thank you all, everyone, and thanks for having me.